There you go. Welcome, everybody. I'm Peter Maravellis, and for those of you online, welcome from all over the world. Glad you could make it tonight in the main room of City Lights. Just to let you know, we are beaming to you from the unceded ancestral homelands of the Ohlone people. There are over a dozen dialects spoken along this peninsula. I want to take a moment to pay our respects to those who have come before us as stewards of the land. So we are very delighted to have Mr. Joel Gion here with us tonight, celebrating in the Jingle, Jangle, Jungle. Brought to us by those fabulous folks at Rare Bird down in LA. And in fact, the books were brought to us in person tonight. And we thank Tyson very, very kindly. Tyson, are you in the room? Hey, come on up here. Come on up here. Share some of your love. We want to share some of our love to you. This man drove all the way up from LA to bring these books to you. So, thank you, man. Come, grab a chair, Sit next to us. Yeah. Cool. So, for some of you in this room, and I'm sure for some of you online, Mr. Joel Gion is no stranger. Of course, the band is world famous. They've produced over 20 albums. They've been absolutely prolific. I mean, something like 24 EPs. Who knows how many like freaking bootlegs, they've produced. And of course, this is the story. This is the intrigue. And besides being a master musician in his own right, and producing recently some really wonderful records, he was the tambourine player, but more importantly, he was also a kind of the psychic glue, if you would, that kind of holds things together, I believe. You call him kind of a pastoral counselor of sorts, that sort of is the one-man Greek chorus that can kind of act as witness to all the grandeur and iniquity of the group. So welcome to City Lights, man, and congratulations.
Thank you so much.
On this really, really awesome book. So we've been seeing this guy come into City Lights now for decades. He is a book buyer. And, it's really hilarious because many of us have ended up going over to Amoeba and blowing a lot of money there. And there is kind of this interesting crossover between music and books. And I'm hoping we talk a little bit about that tonight. But can I have you give these people a little bit of a sample from this book, if you would?
Ha ha ha. Most of the mostly hip audience laughs at Anton's in between song banter. It was our New York City debut, playing to a sold-out crowd at Brownies. The show is going rock solid, and for me, this is one of those unusual moments in life where all high expectations are fulfilled. We're halfway through our tour with Andy and David following close behind, cameras rolling constantly. The next night, the backstage area and toilets at CBGB are living up to their legend and then some. So after a few minutes of living the dream, we can't hold our breath anymore and go to do most of our pre-show hanging in the van right outside the venue doors. During the show, the vibes begin to match the house stench special and things start going wrong. Anton and I are doing the solo folk duo portion of the set when suddenly an obviously wasted dancing guy starts throwing shapes right in front of our half nerd, half looking cool guy, Matt, who is attempting to ignore him while sitting peacefully at the front of the stage. The voguing dancer's shape throwing eventually incites Matt to mirror one back so as to hopefully just get rid of him. But this apparently implements the evil plan of the shape-throwing man, and now having been upgraded to mutual ritual, a portal opens up where the confusion demon is allowed to escape, and that wastes no haste of filling up the entire room with its poison-like gas. I suck on my cocktail straw extra long while everyone else inhales the confusion gas as it swallows every space in the place, right down to the tiniest scum-covered crevasse. Anton then begins criticizing our manager, Dave D., on the mic for offering no stage security assistance that might have prevented whatever's now going on. Meanwhile, right next to him, the confusion demon has tricked Matt into flipping sides. Now he suddenly is defending the drunk shape-throwing guy. Bang! Sometimes everyone in the room is immaculately right while simultaneously pharmaceutical grade wrong all at the same time. And oftentimes when this happens, much like a lab experiment gone horribly awry, there's an explosion so immense that it just blows the entire whatever it is to dust. The smoke clears and Anton has fired our manager, Dave D., while still on stage and before the show is even over. In a flash of a second, individual hopes and dreams and wants and obligations and loyalty and guilt trips collide in a multicolored splatter of rights and wrongs. And this Jackson Pollock of takeaway variants is splattered all over the 1970s New York punk rock scene splatters already there and for all to witness. Oftentimes, it's best to bury the remains of wherever it was once supposed to be and come back down the road to see what kind of flowers grew over the plot. But more than likely, people want to immediately comb the debris, and as a result, tonight is still somehow crawling around on the floor. Matt, Dean, and I call the cab to take us over to a new site to spread around our own personal takeaway wreckage. The next day, Anton, Matt, Peter, and I bust out the busking around Manhattan while bringing it all back home again to Broadway, Times Square, Radio City, Rockefeller Plaza, and Central Park. I feel safe making such a public display with Anton in charge, knowing that there's no way his harmonica can be taken over by New York saxophone spirits that would start in on some kind of Saturday Night Live style solo. Which, because I've never actually been here, seems to be like something that happens a lot. We take our jamboree onto the subway and over to the East Village in St. Mark's Place, where tonight's show is at Coney Island High. 8th Street on St. Mark's Place has a flush field with breezy trees and neighborhood stoops with networks of fire escapes above beautifully natural hip people of every stripe striding the streets. It feels like Sesame Street got an expensive new outdoor set upgrade filmed in widescreen Technicolor. I love it and feel the hit on my internal reset button after finding some proper bug eye sunglasses and record bin diving in slightly subterranean shops. It's a sister street to our own hate, and we are feeling at home and secure here as I spiritually feel our car on the ups and downs roller coaster begin to climb steadily. We meet back up the next morning from our various crash sites, and soon everything we own, amps, guitars, and luggage, is all strewn haphazardly along the sidewalk in front of Coney Island High. Matt's suitcase even has different colored socks unintentionally sticking out of its seams. Conversation is light on how's it going and heavy on loading gear out of the venue. It all feels a little odd, and then suddenly I get a weird suspicion sensation towards Anton's new mustache. It's almost like it's getting too comfortable with itself, not bothered with getting a little too out there in length. The mustache that I had originally begged him to grow so many months ago after he'd momentarily left it on as a joke while shaving. But it makes you look like Sergeant Pepper Ringo, I had pleaded. After much begging, I eventually gave up. Then months later, he decided to grow the mustache for this tour. I'd loved that mustache at first, but now I think I just like it. It's mixing up my radar as a result, and I'm receiving an odd read on Anton's moodiness meter, which has a gauge reading that starts at brooding and tops out on total meltdown. There's an interference which is almost as if the mustache itself is the source of a new lack of concern for the others and the consequences of what I'm now beginning to suspect, the zone hairy decision making. Maybe it's all in my hungover head. I don't share my concerns with any of the others because at the end of the day, it's just a mustache, and I would probably just sound crazy to them. I take a pull of my beer instead. Some of the guys are still inside the club grabbing the last of our gear while Dean and I are watching all the stuff outside. As we sit crouched down, leaning against the wall, we are understandably a little down in the dumps. Then I look up just in time to see Joey Ramone walking by in mid-survey of us. Now looking away again, he simply shakes his head in what looks to be very much like amused disgust as he continues on his way in his The Who Maximum R&B t-shirt. Dean and I are both in mutual awe of his masterful headshake display in both style and execution, clearly confirming him as one of the world's undisputed masters of disgusting headshaking. With Anton apparently unsuccessful in his last-minute endeavor to secure the required quick cash needed to rent a van for the remainder of the tour dates, Dave D has offered to rent us out his van to us, with the one extremely questionable condition that he can ride along. Whether he's wanting to be there to save the day or to laugh when the final pieces fall off the plane is unclear, because his permanent poker face has grown to full poker putty overnight. And I should remind you, he's also really tall. Though it is reluctantly agreed to by Anton, this did not sit well with the mustache, who had very much wanted to be done with Dave right here in New York. A new plan would have to be made. Right on continued tragedy cue, Dave's van breaks down on our way from New York to the next show in North Carolina. And as a result, we arrived too late to be able to play. It didn't make any sense to be skipping shorter drives to bigger cities like Philadelphia and Washington, D.C. But as our new booking manager explained it, we had a fair amount of shows in the South to make up for it. Unless you lose a few hours on a van repair and then miss them because they are so far away that there's no time for any of the curveballs that touring will always throw your way. With no badly needed night's pay and nowhere for the 6 pieces of band to stay, some sympathetic music fans offer us individual lots of wood planks around their well-weathered front porch. This works out fine because it's hotter than blazes and too humid to sleep stuck onto something inside anyway. But then Dave takes the mustache's reserved porch bench and it goes into a rage. This was the kind of argument that didn't come with the reverse option, and as it escalates, it eventually gets so heated that Anton goes ahead and pours a bunch of beer that he'd already drunk on Dave's prized leather jacket, which, if you know Dave, you know is the biggest staple in his everyday stapler. As you can imagine, it would have had been a pretty heated argument. By now, I was avoiding any kind of heat, which absolutely included the argument kind. So I didn't know about the repurposed beer going on to his jacket until the next morning when Dave and his van were already gone. We are still there, and so our continued presence becomes an excuse for a weekend-long party at one of the kids' parents' houses while they're out of town. It's a large house with a large swimming pool and a full bar of large bottles. And after a full-time, full-tilt boogie on my part, I discover once the booze got in there that it went on a memory bank robbing spree. So there's not much away, even though it lasts many days. Now our gallery of characters are all in rotating motion, floating in and out like in a dream sequence. The fearless leader, the idyllic dreamers, the investors, the witnesses, the poet, the physician, the farmer, the scientist, the magician, and all the other so-called gods of our day. Wait, sorry. Somehow along the way, I traded in the blazing heat of the deep south for going to the lost fabled utopia of Atlantis with Donovan. In reality, we were going to Florida. Down in the jungles of the southern states, the tour just seemed to be going on at the speed of stubble as the mustache's consciousness grew in both length and power. Suddenly, the rest of us were dropping invisible balls at any given moment. There always seemed to be something missing that was supposed to have been there. Still, I wasn't ready to yet tell the other guys or call out the mustache and expose it in front of everyone in a dramatic scene. My inner voice constantly wanted me to yell, fuck this, and then leave. But then Anton would smile one of those old smiles, and I'd realize, fuck, he's still in there. Then 5 minutes later, he'd be yelling at somebody again. Those two internal forces were now constantly at war within him. Anton had made some phone calls and convinced a business friend to rent us a van to get to the next show. Then, on our way while passing through the green wilds of Georgia, he sees a van for sale on the side of the road. And so on the way back, he makes some other bigger deal with someone to get a loan to buy the van. Meanwhile, back in LA, the booking agency's adding on last-minute shows, and as a result, we're starting to go into figure eights of the South, bringing on a type of road vertigo that adds to the light-headed swirl of the off-balancing act. We're also the kind of band the local party people want to do that with, and a daily revolving of the menu of random party favors puts us each in different ways over the allotted to be properly navigating our brains around the vertigo tracks of individual consciousness and are all at serious risk of common sense DUIs from the regrets police. Speaking of DUIs, here comes the official tour faceplane. Andy, who is catching back up with us after breaking off in New York, takes Anton in her SUV and we split off into two groups. The rest of the BJM boys and her brother David are in the new van, while Anton does interviews along the drive. With both vehicles now on their own, we don't expect to see those two again until sound check at the venue. Whoa, did you see that, Peter? Dean asked from the front passenger seat. That electric sign just said, drug checkpoint in 1 mile. No. Huh. Should I pull over? Hey guys, drunk point in 1 mile. Are any of you jerks hiding anything from the rest of us? Nobody is, but we all agree it's probably best to get off the next exit just to check the van over for any potential lost roaches or bendels. There's just one exit before the drug checkpoint, and so we pull off on it only to discover that the electric road sign is a lie to lure any guilty parties onto this exit, which is the real drug point made up of about 20 police vehicles that we're now driving straight into. While this is all still off in the distance, it's a one-way ramp, and we have no choice but to continue towards the cluster of police cars, cage vans, and various officers with drug dogs that line each side of the road. The highway exit is a long and wide curve, and the van windshield becomes like a drive-in movie theater screen playing a Sergio Leone-style shot as we pan around the wide expanse populated from end to end with the anti-drug police army. Slowly, reluctantly, we continue further on towards our eventual extreme close-up. Apparently, this is a slow part of the day, and they are eagerly awaiting for the next methed up trailer trash or DUI teens. But we are of a much more delectable, rare, and exotic breed, that of the California weirdo hippie variety, rarely seen around these parts. Excited arms all come out at once in competition for first dib rights and directing us to pull over. For a split second, it kind of feels like being the Bills of the Southern Bowl. But then I realize this is delusion again. who by this point in the tour is like the fifth Beatle. Now fully ensnared in the man's all too real fake drug trap, I have to give it to them. No matter what you want to say about Southern derp law enforcement agents, they are black belts and being a bummer. Y'all step out of the van, please. The classic stereotype Southern cop instructs. He looks just like you'd think, replete with a Yosemite Sam mustache. Shit. I slide the door open, and there's a dog right there who excitedly bounces up and yelps to greet me. Narcotics dogs are usually the only outwardly excited ones in these such scenarios. It's the man here. Another cop of the big guy persuasion pulls the leash back, and the dog makes way for us to exit the vehicle one by one, like fashion show models, and are all in all of our Manson hippie Scooby-Doo-ness glory. I'm not so worried about us having forgotten about drugs, but I am definitely worried about joint roaches, or worse still, mashed into the carpet or inside one of the anonymous loose articles of clothing. Boots, guitar cases, luggage, seats, cigarette butt-filled empty cuts, or maybe one of the ashtrays. Somehow there are no drugs in the van, and by this point, I can't believe that there are no drugs in the van, even more so than the Yosemite Sam mustache man, who is really looking like he can't believe there are no drugs in the van. In fact, when he informs us with great disappointment that there were no drugs in the van, my honest response was, really? We get back on the road having no idea that Andy and Anton had already been busted right here by these very two and taken to jail. Apparently, Anton had a single joint packed away in her luggage. But the good news is, it seems the mustache is apparently an incognito Freemason. And after giving the proper signals to the cops who Yosemite Sam mustache, they're able to get out of jail sooner than normal mustaches would have. The rest of us try to go ahead and play the show without Anton by doing a shorter set of Matt songs, but the club's booker won't go for it. We're not so big in Atlanta, and he's more than happy to get out of having to pay us our performance guarantee. However, we are still allowed to order food from the kitchen and beers from the bar, so when Anton finally arrives later to learn we're now even more broke, he just blows up. First, he flips out on the parking lot. Then he later, just after we finally settled into the cheap motel and punched out for the day, him and our drummer Brad, who's not that good, but he has Brian Jones hair, gets into next level, and we were already at nosebleed high levels as it was. I jump in between them and stop the fight by human Barry and mutual history earned trust. Anton storms out in frustration. Although I know it's the mustache, I'm too tired and over this night to even bring everyone in on what's really going on. The decision turns out to be my mistake as I pass out within one of the human body chalk outlines on the carpet. Apparently, Dean and Brad decide this was the last straw and that they would be flying back to California. The next morning, I wake up to find Anton by looking out the window all the way across the other side of the long, desolate parking lot, playing guitar and singing songs by himself. As I ponder the various angles of this whole situation, despite the wrongs, I ultimately recognize this moment as the time that officially puts it into the too many times to count zone that he is in many ways one of the last of the real deals, regardless. It's suddenly odd to me that no one else seems to grasp that in order for the genuine article to exist in the first place, the flaws are just as important a part of the equation as the benefits. Despite this knowledge, I'm very weary from this first ever tour wear down, and I'm feeling way too tired and hungover to start ranting and raving about evil facial hair possession. I wonder if this whole mustache thing is just me losing my marbles and decide to continue to just keep it to myself from now on. The single marijuana joint bus had temporarily also taken the thrill away from Andy, and she and David were going home early. They see the look on my face and offer to take me along in the SUV documentary machine all the way to California. I instantly agree. Escapism surrounds, and the thoughts of kicking back in comfort from both back seats while we make whatever stops that might strike our fancies along the way. It was settled then. As for the rest of the tour, Anton and Peter and Matt would soldier on like the Kingston Trio or something. One last vehicle stop at a gas station for mutual fill-ups and final farewells. As both vehicles pump gas side by side, James Brown's version of Georgia on My Mind plays through the outdoor area speakers. Anton is weirdly quiet while just hovering around the various conversations. Just as Dean and Brad's cab to the airport pulls out, Matt comes up alongside me, pushes his glasses up, and lays it all out in a whisper. You know, I totally understand you wanting to split, but right now you're the only one of us that has a driver's license. If we get pulled over for anything, that's it. We're totally fucking busted. Fuck. Just like in The Godfather 3, man. Just when I thought I was out, they pulled me back in. 5 minutes later, I'm back in the band again and in the van with the guys. Despite me being the only one with a driver's license, Anton is driving. But we arranged it so we can quickly switch spots in case the man pulls us over for any reason. The current seating configuration also serves to keep in a separate occupied driver space. So on another level, we can all drive away from the events of last night and individually together. He is still quiet and smiling, which I read as gratefulness. After a few minutes of driving along the winding country roads, I'm beginning to settle back into my optimism armor when right on cue, the van's engine throws a rod, which is something that means it has just broken in a way that renders it beyond repair. Suddenly, we are now coasting off the deceptively peaceful, leafy green lined road and onto the upcoming turn-off exit with a signpost that reads, "Welcome to Butts County." I wish that this was just me being goofy right now, but that's actually what the sign says. We've got just enough natural momentum going that we are able to coast through the small exit curve and then off the side of the road where we are clear from blocking any of the other people in Butts' path, which is definitely the place to be. Luckily, about 30-something trees later, there's a small gas station. We all jump out and start pushing the van towards the gas station. How did this happen? I was so close. I was going home. Now it's too late. I know for a fact there's nothing like a payphone inside of Anya and David's car. We push the dead van behind a garbage dumpster on the far side of the parking lot to avoid the attention of the police or anyone else that can see. For the next 3 days, we are a bunch of California hippie rock weirdos hiding in a van behind a garbage dumpster at a gas station in Butts County, Georgia.
So, do you think decadence has a bad rap? Because I have absolutely no regrets for any of the partying that's happened under this roof, and I think hell can oftentimes be much more interesting than heaven.
Well, it's not the most financially beneficial road to take, but if I had a choice, I would do what I did in the way that I did it, because of the experiences that I partook in with these people, and we had the benefit of there not being any internet. So it enabled us this freedom to just get totally psychotically weird with our whatever it was that we could come up with as people. Like, yeah, a lot of the cats and kittens around here.
I was always amused by how Maximum Rock and Roll used to make these little booklets about how you tour the States if you're this little indie band. And it used to make me laugh because I used to think that's idiotic. It's like there is absolutely no way you can stuff a bunch of people into a van. You're on your own. And it just seems, but with this particular group, I mean, the level of creativity as well, this is a different thing altogether. So there's no way to really prepare for it. You're just sort of on the bed of rollers, and when the bed stops, it stops.
That's right. You had no idea what you were rolling into at any given moment, which was kind of cooler than like the ticket companies now that run everything. Like at least back then, you had the freedom and the control to have successes and have failures on whatever it was on your terms. Now it's on some other dime, which is obviously fucked up. So if you're some kids coming out now, you know, you have to it's impossible for an Elvis to come out at this day and age, or a Beatles, because they are lower class people that can't afford to make zero money off of their music on something like you know, the latest technology and how people consume music. And that's fine and that's cool. But that's the trade-off. And it's not a grumble in the jungle or whatever it is. It just is. But so we would go out and, you know, if people liked you, then you could win, you know. So we won, you know, it's like you're out there. You're like, what, you're on the adventure, you know. And if you were cool, you're cool. If you sucked, then you absolutely deserved you deserved the fucking flush, you know. And that's what it was, you know. It's like the Gong Show. The entire world was a giant Gong Show in a way that's gone now, that I think is necessary. But yeah.
I asked Ferlinghetti before he passed away. I said, you know, do you think it would be possible to write some of the letters that you wrote to people? Because he was a huge letter writer. He wrote to Alan, wrote to a bunch of people. I said, do you think it's still possible, like with social media? And he says, absolutely not. He says, no, social media has totally fucked things up. He says, I'm so glad, you know, we were born when we were born to be able to experience creativity in the way we did.
I think there's different modes of the human experience, and we are this one, and how beautiful is that? So we get that and we live by that and we do that. And but yeah, there's this whole other mass majority, and it's just like the 80s, it's just like the 50s, it's just like all the fucking crap, when the fucking crap is getting shoved down your throat. We don't need that, you know. It doesn't control who we are. It doesn't get to say what is valid and what isn't. And in fact, it can actually produce to you the opposite meaning. I mean, people here don't need to hear that, but I think that's the survival of it. Is it unfortunately forces us all into camps, but I don't want to be in the man's camp, man.
There's BJM, but then there's also your work, and you put out some records in recent times, and then you're working on some projects now. And just tell us a little bit about what's coming up.
Well, I'm about 90% done with book 2, which I haven't even read book 1 yet. So whatever, jerk. But I found this huge, newly discovered inspiration in it's embarrassing to admit, but in writing, because I wasn't the guy who was in school trying to figure out like, oh, I read all these books, I want to like be like that, so I'm doing kind of something or other about that. But me, I was going to be in a band no matter what, 24/7 from 5 years old. So much to the point that, and I blame this all on the Beatles, but the week I turned 18, I had 2 weeks left to go to graduate high school. I put in the work. I said, hey, you know what? Fuck all y'all. I'm going to San Francisco and I'm going to be in a band and I don't give a rat's fucking ass about whatever that is. And that's what I did. And I got in a band and I did a bunch of drugs and I got all fucked up and spun out. And I moved back in with my parents and they made me get my GED. But then I went back, I went back to the band and shit happened. And then around 2017, I started writing. And I wasn't going to be a writer. I was going to be a guy in a band. And what I found was, and if you read my book, I'm pretty all right at it. What I found was I'm pretty good at writing. And I didn't know that I was because I was so wrapped up in what I thought and what I felt and what I whatevered. The revolving wheel of your whatever you think that it's supposed to be spun me off the wheel, and I found this other thing, and I was very good at it, and I had no fucking idea. So it's a crazy thing because now I'm, I was in my late 40s, and I don't know, get the machine guns out because here comes the inspirational part. But there's it's a crazy thing that you could figure out painting, or you could figure out whatever it is that you don't even fucking do, that you never. It's crazy when you can do it. Buy my book. You'll see what I'm saying. It's true. I can do it.
So we got Tyson, the publisher, here tonight. And, I'm going to put you on the spot now because you drove all the way up here from LA to bring us books. Thank you very kindly. Would you talk a little bit about this project and working on it?
Well, this is kind of an interesting chain of events that happened. I know Rob Campanella here, and we were working on some projects, and he mentioned, I got to introduce you to Joel because he's been writing some stories. And we corresponded a little bit. But fast forward a few years when I see Joel's name pop up on our online pre-order list for Kerouac books. And Joel sends a note, and we were very late on a Kerouac archive book, and he's like, "Hey man, when's this gonna ship?" And I wrote him back, and
I believe I said fucking jerk. Give me my fucking beatnik.
It's not uncommon for us to be late on things, but quality is what's important. And I said, "Hey, are you still writing?" And he said, "Oh, fuck. Yeah, but I did a deal with White Rabbit in the UK." And I said, "Okay, cool. Well, let's keep on talking about stuff." And then a few weeks later, I heard from the folks in London, and they said, "Hey, do you guys want to do a North American deal?" And then we negotiated that, and very great pairing because the White Rabbit people are amazing, and Lee Brackstone. It's kind of like if Rare Bird was a corporate imprint, it would be very similar to White Rabbit. So great bunch of people, and this is probably the best co-publishing scenario that I can think of for this book. So very honored to be a part of it. Thanks.
Thank you, man. Yes, worthy of applause. Before we go into Q&A, could you read us something, a different tone? Just give us another little taste, because I'm having fun here.
Stand was up with the guy's beard. This is earlier in the tale. It's like 1995, San Francisco. BGM are doing a new time in store for a record shop in the South Bay. Anton is picking me up at the address at the Excelsior district I'd given him last night because I knew that this was going to be another all-nighter. What I didn't know then was that I would be in rare, totally demolished form. Unemployment had by now led to not being able to come with my share of the rent, and I was now basically homeless, bouncing from party place to party place. And it was getting harder and harder to even keep customary vendor links in check. Still, everything had seemed to be going fine or whatever it was. Drugs, booze style. But then these big blue oval science fiction looking hits of ecstasy come out. Not long after the orgy started. And then the next thing I find out is that despite my enthusiasm for all things 60s, I'm just not an orgy person. Not that I'm against it in any way, mind you, but joining in the naked group just wasn't going to float my boat, seemingly. There's no peer pressure greater than that of an orgy situation. Let me tell you, for those who do not already know this. And so one must choose to be either naked or to be clothed on the couch. The problem or the solution, as it were, depending on which side you're on. And I decided my side was outside. From the gray stone apartment steps, I watched the cement sidewalk roll back and forth like a confused escalator as the gray sky above twinkles oddly while the ornate gray Victorian houses across the street march towards me, jerking from side to side like Atari space invaders, until just as they get close, they suddenly flash, reappear back where they'd started across the street, and the start of the whole process again. Until I stop looking, when then again and beyond that, there's not much reasoning or rhyming on offer this time, as this was all weird and whatever else. And anyway, why was I feeling so fucking unnecessarily high was the real mystery. Mystery has a knack of turning into misery, and after that settles in for a while, then Anton pulls up. Unstable condition remains stable, and it's way too late for displays of normality now. I can't even formulate an explanation to Anton. Fresh faced and sipping to go coffee. Something else must have been in the drugs, and I certainly wouldn't put it past certain people. I say in a tone I take as not totally sure he wants to spend the next 40 minutes in a compact car with me to the state I'm in. I start gingerly, but end up landing hard into the passenger seat, then use my body weight to aid my arm in shutting the door, then rebounding back. I fall against it, cheek to the window glass, and not even trying to hide the fact that I am fucked. Right? He has his parka on, which fences his neck in mod fur, and his front bangs give a half inch before lush eyebrows pick things back up and help to frame his handsome and gentle with driven intent features. He is exasperated in vibe tone because it's the first thing in the morning and here we go already, but still a tolerant and patient friend. This is like a couple of years earlier before the last story. I was certainly not making for the most attractive scene, sweating bullets while physically having a hard time not pouring out of my seat onto the floor of the car, and I knew it. At least I'd made it, though. No matter how bad things ever got for myself as a result of myself, missing the boat was always a non option. He takes a drag off his now down to stubbing sides camel non-filter and blows it out the window with the hard sigh. Thankfully, this is as direct as the call-outs get, because I know I'm a wreck right now and it's already embarrassing. The medium-sized record store is very white and filled with Long Island racks, mostly of CDs, the most popular physical form of the day. I'm still feeling pretty rank, but Matt has a pint of hooch and I take a good pull. Dean is in heaven in moments like these and signifies so upon his first drinking in my demolished state. Not feeling so hot today. He casually smiles, only barely hiding his relish at my current plight with all the effort of frisbeeing a trash can lid onto an overflowing garbage dumpster. Still, it's nice to be entertaining, even on this level. And all of these different shades of support are welcome. It's a fertile ground where I can begin to make amends rather than face judgy vibes that would make it all way worse. Brian is preoccupied with setting up the drums at the front of the store, looking detached and serious. Jeff is in the nearby corner nodding along to Dell, the store owner and once BGM manager for a night. Dell has sort of a parrot-shaped face with long and thin purple hair and a high shrill voice that strays that way even in casual conversation. He knows a lot about music and has a lot of opinions that go along with all that, and hear them fly around the room like large squawking cartoon birds until we can finally drown it out with a backwards window display inside the shop's all-glass storefront. Matt is melancholily moody, Dean in shades of in place serious and serene. Anton sings and strums the ship forward, and Jeff now begins to wail the solo with jaw clenched, hoofing pompadour, threatening to float him away like a bouffant balloon when it hits me. The lights at the tip of the shrapnel that signals the very beginnings of being led back to feeling normal. Coming down while coming up on the music is a metamorphosis most true, and I'm soon to be fully inside the safe confines of the spirit thanks to the band and the music. This music. Now in a horizontal sonic avalanche, rattling the rows and rows of plastic CDs, with all of us together on the pulpit of sorts, and it's the spirituality that washes all the badness away. The largeness of the reverb and the bump and twang dancing over it as I keep the chiming beat with the drums, and soon enough the inner light grow brighter with the damage like a salt lamp being dimmed up, and I am free again. Despite being saved, for today anyway, I'd very soon be disappearing again, this time all the way out of town. Blasted drugs. And a few months from now, I'd be back fresh-faced and yet wind up doing more of you than ever.
Yeah, Mr. Joel Gion. So we will take some questions. I ask of you that you allow me to come to you with the microphone and not shout them from across the room, because our folks online aren't going to be able to hear otherwise. And so it takes about 30 seconds for the little gray cells to be able to kind of formulate. And then soon
I feel it.
the arms will begin to rise, and I will get up from out of the chair, and here we are.
So the next book, you're just leaving us hanging.
Yeah.
So kind of repeated what I said.
Yep. That's right. I said that.
Cards are close to the chest.
Oh, sorry. No, it's the next 10 years, So this is the first 10, and the second one is the next 10. And hopefully I'll be dead before I have to write the next 10. That would be all right.
Oh, we got someone way in the back. Okay, you got to hold on a second, because I got to make my way to you. If you can come forward just a little bit, because I don't think this is going to reach all of them.
So how do you remember everything?
Well, I didn't have a cocaine habit, so that was good. Okay, well, the main thing was, I will say, was the fact that for the early days, so that story I just told, I was doing a lot of amphetamines. And those are, if for those of you who don't know this, the most mind sharpening thing. It's the most mind sharpening tool you're ever going to get. And at the same time, I was a broke ass bum, so I couldn't afford to be an alcoholic. So I couldn't afford to drink all the beer that I wish, or whatever it was that I wish that I could have drunk. So I didn't have those dollars. So I had the don't do this at home, kids. But I had the power of uppers. And but beyond that, of course, these things don't come down to drugs. That would just be stupid, right? What I realized through this process is that the events that happen to in your life that mean the most, that make the biggest impression, you never forget. You know, that first concert or whatever it is, the big ones you don't forget. And I was kind of an introvert, you know, pop culture nerd kid who had put himself in this scene where there was all these musician eccentric super artistic people. And how am I going to compete with this? I chose artificial eccentricity, and I got in, and somehow I kind of outdid like a lot of them through that avenue. And so I was begat at a constant flow of memories that were very important. I was in the best band in the fucking world. And to me, and I could not believe that I had wrangled my way, blagged my way into this scenario. So all of those memories were very important to me. And but that's cool. Basically, I couldn't afford to be an alcoholic. So that's the best answer.
Oh, but just a hope. Let me get over folks online and not gonna be able to.
So the memories, when we have memories, we have this vague area, you know we did this, that, the other thing. But as you started writing, did they become clearer and clearer and you were able to put them down into words? Is that how they came about?
Well, I started with everything that I could remember. And I made a list of that. What could I just say no matter what I remember? And then I did things, you just come up with tools like, well, wow, this is fun. I'm really having a good time what I'm doing, and I want to keep doing this. So how do I keep doing it? So you start to research yourself. You start to private investigate yourself. And the internet came into this a little bit, you know. It's like, well, I made a list. You know, there's tools like making lists of things. Like I was lucky because in the early 90s, all of these English bands were coming to San Francisco for the first time. So I was able to look, what the fuck was that fucking Verve show? And when the fuck did the Charlatans? And you put it all on a list. And then you've got the list, the My Bloody Valentine, all of them. And then you go, well, what apartment was I at when I got home and everybody's mad at me because I was wasted from that show or whatever it was, or what girlfriend did I have or whatever. And it was mostly gigs. It was really great about this time period was it was so the calendar was gigs, you know. And then what happened in between that? And you know, like I stated earlier, I was coming into this at a late date. And so what was interesting to me is like, I'm not, I didn't get a lot of whatever. My parents couldn't like pay for like whatever. So I had like figure shit out. And, I had all these street kind of smart stories that I had accumulated over the years. And so that was my school. But the more you investigate your memory, the more it will present itself to you. And if you don't put in the work, it won't present itself. And it's amazing what it will do for you if you put in the work, is all I can say.
Well put.
So, in the section of that you read where I think it's you're in the New York show, you do an amazing job of establishing a set of archetypes of kind of the investor, the creative type, these types of people who we all or who you would know very well in this industry. Do you think that those archetypes have substantively changed now?
Yeah, I think every common person can be those people. It was a complete and monumental, universal, from the bone to the last piece of peach fuzz shakedown of the music industry when streaming came out. All the people that would come, because I worked at Amoeba, and all the people would come in with their CDs that they'd gotten. Everybody was kicked out of the kingdom. It was crazy. The music industry, there's just so many levels that are involved. PR people and yeah, and it's fucked up. It's like a land grab. It's the railroads coming, and that's just like, let's take it.
Also at that time in the 90s, there's a big moment where there's a lot of mergers that happen and it really shoves a lot of people out, and kind of, I think noticeably several bands in San Francisco who are really well positioned to move on weren't able to actually go anywhere because of that.
Murders.
Mergers.
Oh, mergers.
Mergers have been great.
Harley's back.
It's so awesome.
Yeah, sorry. I was like, what's this chick talking about?
I don't
No,
know.
yeah.
Right, but
Yeah.
there were all the type of whole kind of where the industry sort of consolidates itself at a very pivotal time for independent music.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. This is kind of my story kind of takes place during the last gasp of that. It's the last of the gold rush before people don't even live here. You know what I mean? There's this great industry that was going on, and everybody lived. The entertainment lawyers, and everybody. We all lived here. We all kind of were a microcosm that fed each other, and it was like a local business. And then yeah.
Do you miss having the band around regularly? And what's it like when y'all go on tour these days?
Do you have the internet? Yeah. My name's Joel Gion, and I think I'm in the Brian Jonestown Massacre. Yeah, no, I wasn't there for the big one. The big Thunderdome experience. Yeah, I mean that's come and gone so many times over the decades. Like it almost gets repetitive. It's like life, certain people or certain situations or certain mistakes or whatever it is tend to come around eventually again. A revolving pattern. Blah blah blah. But yeah, I don't know. To answer your question, because there's a bigger question to top your question. I don't know if I'm in the band. I don't know, man. Who knows? Life's a trip. Shit.
We have time for maybe a couple more.
Thank you. Hi, Joel. How are you? I used to live and work in a town called Sonora, California, and I've met quite a few people there that know you as well. I wonder if it features in the book at all.
As my Hermes Bosch fucking hell zone. Yeah, it's in there. It's in there. Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Yeah, no, yeah. Yeah, it's a spoiler alert, but I guess what kind of forced me to be who I am, and thank you for your patience. I read some good stuff and it's kind of funny. I turned into a weirdo. Because I was moved to a small redneck town in California that wasn't like the hippie kind. It was the opposite. And I had to deal with being chased down the street on a daily basis in some redneck town. I was like a goth kid, Victorian sect. You know, and I would wear tights, I'd wear skirts, I have makeup every day. You know, I was just like doing my thing, and like it was a physical threat every day just to reject whatever it was. But it's the 80s and whatever, shut up and suck it up, and you know, that's what we dealt with then. But yeah, that's cool. You're from there? Bad.
Okay, one more question, and then we're going to a signing. Anybody back here? Okay.
Hi, Joel.
Hey man, I know you.
Good to see you. Did the Purple Onion happen to make it into the book, or Tom Guido?
The Purple Onion is in book 2 because I had too many gig stories. But yeah, I had a pretty good one. And then I got somebody to put it out as a personal essay, but then they went out of business. So that's life, right? I guess. But yeah, no, I got Guido, yeah, for sure. He was huge.
Well, thanks a lot, man. Congratulations. And thanks to all of you for joining us tonight. And those of you online, it's been a pleasure. And we are going to sign books tonight and try to get everybody on that side of the room. Going to have the line come in this way. Joel's going to be behind the table. I'm going to give you Post-its with which I want you to write to whom you want the book signed to. Please print legibly. And thank you again.